As the Melon Music Awards 2025 approach their peak on December 20, attention across the K-pop industry has quietly shifted toward one name that continues to command extraordinary public interest: Jin of BTS. While BTS is not scheduled to perform as a full group at this year's ceremony, discussions around potential nominations and recognition for Jin's solo work have become one of the most talked about narratives surrounding the awards. Industry observers note that this year's MMA season feels different, marked less by confirmed appearances and more by anticipation, speculation, and fan-driven momentum. Throughout 2025, Jin's solo activities have demonstrated remarkable consistency in public reception, from digital performance to audience engagement. His releases have maintained stable streaming numbers on Melon and other domestic platforms, while international metrics show continued growth well beyond the usual promotional cycles. This sustained presence has fueled conversations about whether Jin could secure major nominations, particularly in fan-voted or popularity-based categories. Even without official confirmation from Melon, the volume of online discussion itself has become a story, reflecting how award season dynamics are increasingly shaped by real-time audience participation rather than last-minute announcements. ARMY communities worldwide have responded with organized voting drives, social media campaigns, and detailed analyses of eligibility criteria, carefully comparing Jin's achievements against the MMA's historical standards. Korean fan cafes and global platforms alike have been sharing streaming guides and reminder schedules throughout the day, underscoring how deeply invested fans are in seeing Jin acknowledged on one of South Korea's most influential music stages. Hashtags related to Jin and MMA 2025 trended intermittently on December 20, signaling that even without a confirmed nomination list, the conversation remains highly active. Music critics have also weighed in, suggesting that Jin's potential recognition would symbolize a broader shift in how solo projects from group idols are evaluated. Rather than being viewed as side ventures, his work is increasingly discussed as a standalone artistic trajectory deserving of equal consideration. Analysts point out that the Melon Music Awards, known for balancing digital performance with public impact, are uniquely positioned to reflect this change if Jin appears among the nominees. As the ceremony unfolds and official results draw closer, the uncertainty itself has amplified the emotional stakes. Whether or not Jin ultimately secures a nomination or award, his presence looms large over MMA 2025, proving that influence is not measured solely by stage time. On December 20, the narrative surrounding Jin is less about confirmation and more about expectation, a testament to the enduring connection between his music and a global audience that continues to rally behind him. As the Melon Music Awards 2025 unfold on December 20, one of the most persistent and emotionally charged conversations surrounding the ceremony centers on the possibility of solo recognition for Jin of BTS. Although BTS is not appearing as a full group this year, Jin's name continues to surface across fan discussions, media commentary, and industry speculation, creating a powerful narrative that exists alongside the official award proceedings. The absence of a confirmed performance has not diminished his presence. Instead, it has intensified curiosity about how his solo achievements might be acknowledged on one of South Korea's most prestigious music stages. Throughout 2025, Jin's solo releases and public activities have demonstrated an unusual longevity in both domestic and global markets. His music maintained strong digital performance on Melon long after initial release periods, while international streaming numbers showed consistent engagement rather than the sharp peaks and drops typical of short promotional cycles. This steady momentum has become central to debates over potential nominations, especially in categories where digital impact and public response play a significant role. Industry watchers note that such consistency aligns closely with the Melon Music Awards' evolving criteria, which increasingly reflect long-term listener behavior rather than momentary virality. On December 20, ARMY communities across multiple time zones mobilized with renewed intensity. Social platforms filled with discussions analyzing chart data, eligibility timelines, and historical precedents from past MMA ceremonies. Korean fan cafes echoed similar sentiments, with fans expressing both cautious optimism and emotional investment in the outcome. For many, the possibility of Jin receiving solo recognition is seen not only as a personal milestone for the artist, but also as a symbolic moment for BTS's broader post-military era, where individual members' paths are beginning to receive independent validation. Music critics and cultural commentators have added further depth to the conversation, suggesting that Jin's case represents a larger shift within the K-pop industry. Solo projects from established group members are no longer perceived as temporary experiments, but as fully realized artistic statements. In this context, any acknowledgement from the Melon Music Awards would signal institutional recognition of that shift, reinforcing the idea that solo artistry can coexist rather than compete against group identity. As the award ceremony progresses and anticipation builds, the uncertainty surrounding Jin's potential nomination has become a defining feature of MMA 2025. Whether his name is ultimately called or not, the scale of attention directed toward him on this day underscores a broader truth. Influence in modern K-pop is measured not only by stage appearances or trophies, but by sustained public connection. On December 20, Jin stands at the center of that reality, embodying an award season narrative driven as much by expectation and emotional resonance as by official results. As the Melon Music Awards 2025 take place on December 20, the spotlight has unexpectedly shifted toward a question that continues to dominate fan and media conversations: whether Jin of BTS could receive solo recognition at one of South Korea's most influential music ceremonies. Despite the absence of a full group BTS performance, Jin's name has remained firmly embedded in award season discourse, turning speculation itself into a defining narrative of this year's MMA. His growing solo presence has ensured that even without an official announcement, anticipation surrounding his potential nomination feels impossible to ignore. Over the course of 2025, Jin's solo work has shown a rare kind of endurance within the fast-moving K-pop landscape. Rather than fading after initial release periods, his music continued to chart steadily on domestic platforms while maintaining strong engagement internationally. Industry analysts have pointed out that this pattern closely mirrors the Melon Music Awards' emphasis on digital performance and sustained public interest. This, as a result, discussions around Jin are no longer rooted solely in fandom enthusiasm, but are increasingly framed through measurable data and long-term impact, lending credibility to predictions of possible recognition. On December 20, fan communities across multiple time zones mobilized with renewed intensity. Social platforms filled with discussions analyzing chart data, eligibility timelines, and historical precedents from past MMA ceremonies. Korean fan cafes echoed similar sentiments, with fans expressing both cautious optimism and emotional investment in the outcome. For many, the possibility of Jin receiving solo recognition is seen not only as a personal milestone for the artist, but also as a symbolic moment for BTS's broader post-military era, where individual members' paths are beginning to receive independent validation. Music critics and cultural commentators have added further depth to the conversation, suggesting that Jin's case represents a larger shift within the K-pop industry. Solo projects from established group members are no longer perceived as temporary experiments, but as fully realized artistic statements. In this context, any acknowledgement from the Melon Music Awards would signal institutional recognition of that shift, reinforcing the idea that solo artistry can coexist rather than compete against group identity. As the award ceremony progresses and anticipation builds, the uncertainty surrounding Jin's potential nomination has become a defining feature of MMA 2025. Whether his name is ultimately called or not, the scale of attention directed toward him on this day underscores a broader truth. Influence in modern K-pop is measured not only by stage appearances or trophies, but by sustained public connection. On December 20, Jin stands at the center of that reality, embodying an award season narrative driven as much by expectation and emotional resonance as by official results. As the Melon Music Awards 2025 unfold on December 20, a quiet but powerful narrative has taken shape around the possibility of solo recognition for Jin of BTS, capturing the attention of fans, media outlets, and industry observers alike. Although BTS is not present as a full group at this year's ceremony, Jin's name continues to surface organically throughout award day conversations, creating an atmosphere of anticipation that feels just as intense as a confirmed appearance. The focus has shifted from who is on stage to who remains firmly in the public consciousness. Throughout 2025, Jin's solo activities have demonstrated a level of consistency that stands out in an industry driven by rapid trends and short promotional cycles. His music maintained steady digital performance on major platforms, reflecting long-term listener loyalty rather than brief bursts of attention. This sustained engagement has become central to discussions about Melon Music Awards nominations, particularly as the ceremony increasingly emphasizes cumulative digital impact and audience response. As a result, speculation surrounding Jin is no longer limited to fan hopes, but is reinforced by measurable performance indicators that align closely with the award's evaluation framework. On the day of the awards, ARMY communities across the globe remained highly active, closely monitoring announcements while sharing emotional reflections online. Timelines filled with chart breakdowns, historical comparisons to past MMA winners, and messages expressing how meaningful solo recognition for Jin would be at this stage of his career. In South Korea, fan cafes reflected a similar mood, blending cautious optimism with pride in how far Jin's individual artistry has evolved. For many fans, this moment represents not just a potential accolade, but a symbolic affirmation of Jin's growth beyond group-centered narratives. Industry commentators have also framed this conversation within a broader cultural shift. Solo projects by established group members are increasingly viewed as legitimate artistic statements rather than temporary side ventures. Jin's case exemplifies this transformation, as his work is now evaluated on its own merit within major award discussions. Any acknowledgement from the Melon Music Awards would reinforce the idea that solo identity and group legacy can coexist without diminishing one another, signaling a maturing perspective within the K-pop industry. As the ceremony progresses and anticipation lingers, the uncertainty surrounding Jin's potential nomination has become one of the most emotionally charged elements of MMA 2025. Whether his name is ultimately announced or not, the intensity of the conversation surrounding him speaks volumes. On December 20, Jin's influence is measured not solely by trophies or stage time, but by the enduring connection he maintains with listeners, a presence strong enough to shape the narrative of one of the year's biggest music events without ever stepping into the spotlight. As the Melon Music Awards 2025 reach their most anticipated moments on December 20, a compelling storyline has emerged around the possibility of solo recognition for Jin of BTS, transforming what might have been a routine award season into a deeply emotional and closely watched event. Even without a confirmed group appearance by BTS, Jin's presence has been unmistakable, driven not by stage performances, but by sustained public interest, digital performance, and the collective anticipation of fans who believe this year could mark a significant turning point in his solo career. Throughout 2025, Jin's solo releases and activities demonstrated an uncommon durability in an industry known for its rapid cycles. His music maintained steady digital performance on Melon well beyond its initial release window, while international platforms reflected consistent engagement rather than fleeting spikes. This pattern has become central to award season discussions, particularly because the Melon Music Awards increasingly emphasize long-term digital impact and listener behavior. As a result, speculation surrounding Jin's eligibility and potential nomination has gained traction not just among fans, but also among industry observers, who see his performance metrics aligning with the ceremony's core evaluation standards. On the day of the awards, social media activity surrounding Jin intensified noticeably. Fans across different regions shared analyses of chart data, revisited Melon's eligibility rules, and compared Jin's achievements with those of previous nominees. The tone of these conversations reflected more than simple excitement. For many, this moment symbolized recognition of Jin's artistic growth and individuality. In Korean fan cafes, discussions carried a similar emotional weight, with fans expressing pride in how Jin's individual identity has matured while still remaining connected to BTS's legacy. Cultural commentators have pointed out that Jin's situation reflects a broader shift within K-pop. Solo projects by established group members are no longer viewed as side endeavors, but as serious artistic statements capable of standing on their own within major award platforms. Jin's inclusion in MMA discussions, even before any official confirmation, highlights how perceptions have evolved. It suggests that the industry is increasingly willing to evaluate solo work based on merit, consistency, and public resonance, rather than solely on group prominence. As the ceremony unfolds and the final announcements draw closer, the uncertainty surrounding Jin's potential nomination has become one of the most emotionally charged narratives of MMA 2025. Regardless of the outcome, the scale and intensity of attention surrounding his name underscore a larger truth about today's music landscape. Influence is no longer defined only by trophies or live performances, but by the ability to sustain a meaningful connection with listeners. On December 20, Jin stands at the center of that reality, shaping the story of the Melon Music Awards through anticipation, impact, and an enduring bond with his audience. As the Melon Music Awards 2025 take place on December 20, a growing sense of anticipation surrounds the possibility of solo recognition for Jin of BTS, turning his name into one of the most quietly dominant topics of this year's award season. Although BTS is not appearing as a full group at the ceremony, Jin's influence remains unmistakable, carried by months of consistent performance, public engagement, and a fan-driven momentum that refuses to fade. Rather than diminishing his presence, the lack of a confirmed appearance has intensified attention, transforming speculation itself into one of the most compelling narratives of MMA 2025. Throughout the year, Jin's solo work has demonstrated a rare stability in the K-pop industry, where success is often measured in brief viral moments. His music maintained steady digital performance on Melon, continuing to attract listeners long after typical promotional cycles ended. Internationally, his releases showed similar endurance, reflecting not just curiosity, but sustained listener loyalty. These patterns have become central to award season discussions, particularly because the Melon Music Awards increasingly emphasize long-term digital impact and listener behavior. As a result, speculation surrounding Jin's eligibility and potential nomination has gained traction not just among fans, but also among industry observers, who see his performance metrics aligning with the ceremony's core evaluation standards. On the day of the awards, social media activity surrounding Jin intensified noticeably. Fans across different regions shared analyses of chart data, revisited Melon's eligibility rules, and compared Jin's achievements with those of previous nominees. The tone of these conversations reflected more than simple excitement. For many, this moment symbolized recognition of Jin's artistic growth and individuality. In Korean fan cafes, discussions carried a similar emotional weight, with fans expressing pride in how Jin's individual identity has matured while still remaining connected to BTS's legacy. Cultural commentators have pointed out that Jin's situation reflects a broader shift within K-pop. Solo projects by established group members are no longer viewed as side endeavors, but as serious artistic statements capable of standing on their own within major award platforms. Jin's inclusion in MMA discussions, even before any official confirmation, highlights how perceptions have evolved. It suggests that the industry is increasingly willing to evaluate solo work based on merit, consistency, and public resonance, rather than solely on group prominence. As the ceremony unfolds and the final announcements draw closer, the uncertainty surrounding Jin's potential nomination has become one of the most emotionally charged narratives of MMA 2025. Regardless of the outcome, the scale and intensity of attention surrounding his name underscore a larger truth about today's music landscape. Influence is no longer defined only by trophies or live performances, but by the ability to sustain a meaningful connection with listeners. On December 20, Jin stands at the center of that reality, shaping the story of the Melon Music Awards through anticipation, impact, and an enduring bond with his audience. As the Melon Music Awards 2025 take place on December 20, a growing sense of anticipation surrounds the possibility of solo recognition for Jin of BTS, turning his name into one of the most quietly dominant topics of this year's award season. Although BTS is not appearing as a full group at the ceremony, Jin's influence remains unmistakable, carried by months of consistent performance, public engagement, and a fan-driven momentum that refuses to fade. Rather than diminishing his presence, the lack of a confirmed appearance has